Bertemu kembali pada akhir 2019, data daripada Juniper Research lapor yang blockchain akan membolehkan penjimatan $31 bilion dalam penipuan makanan di serata dunia pada 2024. Kajian berkenaan menyebut penipuan makanan dan juga kos pematuhan dikurangkan ataupun dapat dikurangkan dengan jumlah yang besar pada 2021 dan juga menjelang 2024. Ini dicapai menerusi penjejak dan sensor IoT membolehkan kos penjual dan memastikan rantaian bekalan yang lebih teratur. Di Malaysia, anak syarikat XOX Berhad TraX membawakan perbincangan berkenaan dengan keselamatan makanan dan juga jaminan bekalan makanan dalam rantaian bekalan makanan melalui blockchain. Ini termasuk bahan makanan, sumber pembungkusan melalui kerjasama dengan pembekal. Kita ingin membincangkan isu ini dan juga topik ini bersama dengan Pengurus Komuniti TraX, Jazilah Mohsin. Izinkan saya meneruskan dalam bahasa Inggeris. Jazilah, thank you for joining us. Jazilah, tell us about traceability in blockchain technology and how is that related to the food industry? Because I think once you mention the word blockchain, people will immediately recall the finance part of blockchain.
Correct. Thank you so much for having me, Rizal. All right, so I guess definitely I have to address that part of how blockchain and cryptocurrency sometimes get into the same picture. So just to summarize it, cryptocurrency is using blockchain technology. And what that means is that it uses a decentralized system. And decentralized system here, it means that anything that is put into the system or encrypted into that system is shared in different nodes or computers. And because of that, there will be different parties or many parties that have the most up-to-date information versus or compared to a centralized system that uses, say, a database or a server system that is easily hacked or accessible or changed or can be manipulated. But using blockchain technology, because of how diversified and how it's spread, it's definitely harder for a lot of hackers or people who want to mismanage the situation by using that kind of way. And again, how does that come into food safety and how does it affect people in traceability? The best example I can give for everyone right now today is, say, for example, Google Documents, right? They allow you to share with your teammates and your whole team. And anyone that changes or adds on to that document will be able to list down what they have done, who has done it, and so on. And that's a traceability part that I want to bring up. And that is how blockchain helps it. It's to make things transparent for people. So you can actually see, from which point this has changed, or if there's an issue at one point, you can easily track down who is the person or the gatekeeper that had done so.
But why the food industry and why traceability? Why is it important now? Why do people talk about it so much right now?
Sure. So I think traceability has been in the conversation for a very long time, but of late, especially due to the pandemic, for homegrown cases, of course, that would be like our meat cartel incidences. And food is such an integral part of our daily lives, right? And you face a lot of incidences where there are cases of fake goods in the market, where something is really cheap. And how do I actually differentiate what is real and what is not? Consumers today are much smarter in terms of identifying these kind of things. And companies that adopt such systems will actually be ahead of the game for sure. If that doesn't actually make a justification for them, they should look around globally what's happening in the market. In America, for example, the FDA has come up with a food safety modernization. Because even for them, they understand that things have to be more transparent for the consumers. Consumers are questioning where things come from. And essentially, you have to be ready for that kind of transition now more than ever, for sure.
But would this also make the cost for suppliers, for retailers, would this also reduce their costs in terms of managing the tracking of the products and services across the retail, the supply chain?
Correct. So there are certain cases that, I'll be very honest, have definitely benefited from this. But in terms of direct costs, it's a very unusual or hard gauge to do, because when it comes to traceability, majority of the time when you see it be very effective is when there is an issue with a product, whether there is, someone got food poisoning because of it, and you want to trace the exact batch where it's gone from. Those kind of things affect the brand name, affect the brand image, and cost more to actually rectify. So those are one of the major costs that you save, right? You have that brand awareness that yes, everything here is amazingly good, and I know that I will be protected by this brand. But apart from that, definitely in terms of how you're managing all your supply chains, it's very seamless, right? Because you no longer have to have that paperwork part of it, where every department usually will have to submit paperwork and verify paperwork from one point to another. So things like that save time and costs, which will translate to the output that comes out from there.
Jazilah, let's talk about the benefits to consumers, because I think right now consumers are a bit more aware of where their food or products are coming from. They want to know whether this is a good product in terms of its impact on the environment. Can this also help consumers to consume better and to also be mindful of the impact that they make when they consume certain products or food products?
Correct. That can definitely affect the consumers, and how it happens is how the product is traced, right? So ideally, when a company comes into this whole supply chain process, they have to show from the very bare basics of where the thing came from or where they had actually sourced the ingredients. And the consumers, the end user, will be able to value whether, okay, this is something that is ethically sourced, value for money. And this has been forefronted and pushed by United Nations. I believe it is one of the SDG goals, and it's number 12, which is ethical consumption and ethical use. This needs to be highlighted also to a lot of companies that it is really in a global pipeline to do so. And for consumers, they have to definitely be aware, because even now in the day and age, I can just get someone's packaging, go to a factory and mimic every single thing. We see that on a very regular basis. I'm sure if you are into social media, you heard of Khairul Aming, and he has done his sambal that was sold within 1 or 2 hours.
Yes.
Yeah, and because of that, the amount of people that were counterfeiting and making fraud products, but having the same packaging, as a consumer, I couldn't tell the difference, or anyone can't tell the difference. So that is a major example of how consumers as well as companies need to understand why this is important.
Jazilah, tell us more about how do we get this out there to SMEs and enterprises who are also looking to have more digitalization in their processes, in their operations. How would this help them to also manage future products, demands and supply?
Sure. So here at TraX, well, basically what we are doing is just not the traceability part, because traceability, of course, is a very important part of it, but we believe that all the big data things are more beneficial, right? Like you mentioned, forecasting and so on. So usually when it comes to SMEs, they really need to see their legacy systems, what is currently being used and how can it be integrated. But again, certain companies require different type of specifications. For example, if they are exporting out of Malaysia, then there'll be another set of rulings that need to be taken into consideration. Right? So if I were to export out to US or China, there will be a certain set of rules that I have to follow the regulators on that side of the world. Right? So for us as a technology company, that's the main reason why we're working with other communities as well as institutions. One of the examples is, of course, INSAF. Currently, we are looking into halal traceability to understand why the SMEs are facing either difficulty in adoption or to understand the pain points. But predominantly, they really need to understand what are the current systems that they use. Digitalization works best when you know in and out what is required.
We have about 1 minute before we end the interview, yeah, Jazilah.
Sure.
But tell us about food security and how traceability could help with food security.
Sure. So in terms of food security, we all know in this day and age, you go into different ports, different handling. Majority of the time, the last mile person, you will not know who that person is. And contamination can happen, or, shifting of products can happen. So when it comes to traceability, you really need to fine tune and pinpoint where it happened. If, say, for example, you already have a whole storage and you know this batch came from where, you can go down to the very point where it came out, when it came out, and when is the expiry date. So food security wise, traceability is very, very important. It surpasses the monetary value of it, especially for the end user and the consumer, because nobody wants to get a faulty product at the end of the day.